the Supreme Court ruled recently that you can't select students to the university, any school really, but universities were really the focus, using the criteria of their race or ancestry or culture. What do you guys think about that?
A lot of different types of people are like disenfranchised for the last 200 years, whether it be black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. So I feel like trying to do affirmative action, like the idea of it, to try to make the playing field even for everyone was a good idea. I think now they're trying to get rid of it because ideally it should be like that.
They're, relatively speaking, certainly relative to the world, they're rich, right? And so what's your background?
I'd say I'm also like middle class, upper middle class, I think.
Okay, all right. So if we have some kind of, so as a white woman, if we have some kind of affirmative, some program that's going to help to even the playing field, these two guys are going to benefit from it. You're not. But what do you do about the fact that we have these programs that just seem like they're unfair? To, like, for example, Jada's lower class, working class. Like, you would get something, but she wouldn't. How do you manage that in your mind?
Like, why aren't we asking questions like, okay, is affirmative action only by race? Are there other forms of affirmative action? Because there really are.
So to provide their children that set amount of wealth, if it's abundant.
If your parents work hard and they deserve those opportunities, I would just say, like, when we look at affirmative action in this conversation, who does not work hard?
We're going to talk about what we used to call affirmative action, okay? But the Supreme Court ruled recently that you can't select students to the university, any school really, but universities were really the focus, using the criteria of their race or ancestry or culture, okay? So that cannot lead the way. So you can't say, you know, you can have a certain number of black students or brown students or Latino students, whatever the case is, right? And you just can't use that. You have to use other things instead of that. That's just not acceptable. What do you guys think about that? The Supreme Court ruled that, so the universities have to comply.
I think in a perfect world, like, that idea would be good. But the thing is, there's more like nuance and stuff when it comes to races and religions, or not races and religions, but races and cultures in the United States. Like, a lot of different types of people are like disenfranchised for the last 200 years, whether it be black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. So I feel like trying to do affirmative action, like the idea of it, to try to make the playing field even for everyone was a good idea. I think now they're trying to get rid of it because ideally it should be like that, where, you know, everyone should be treated equal going into college. But we also had things like slavery and, or not immigration, but people like colonialism, like stuff like that.
Okay. Javier, how about you, man?
Yeah.
What's your gut?
I would say that, as Zach mentioned, it would be nice to think like everything could be like even for everyone, that everyone could have the same chance and everything. But the actual truth, and I will be more like in the logic side, like a statistical side, there will always be trends, and you cannot actually like try to directly affect a trend. It will keep being there. You can try to, it's like, imagine you want to have, let's say, 25% Latino in a community or in a college. No matter how much you try, eventually it will just switch or shift. You will get more, you will get less. You can try to prevent any kind of bias, but as a humans, we're already biased by 1,000 million variables. So trying to think that we cannot be biased about a thing, I don't think it's like really plausible.
We're talking leveling the playing field at some level, right? But you come from means, right? And you're upper middle class. They're both, they're relatively speaking, certainly relative to the world, they're rich, right? And so what's your background?
I'd say I'm also like middle class, upper middle class, I think.
Okay, all right. So if we have some kind of, so as a white woman, if we have some kind of affirmative, some program that's going to help to even the playing field, These two guys are going to benefit from it. You're not.
As much as we're getting in debt, I think a lot of like U.S. citizens too are getting in debt on like college in general. And I would say like, yeah, I'm pretty privileged, and I'm not gonna lie about that. Like in the country that I live, like my family is from Peru, but now they moved to Chile and now they're living in Canada. They would say like, okay, like his family is doing good, and of course it is. But I'm not really saying that. For my whole life, I was thinking about coming to like US and things like that. But I think even though we will keep trying to make the field leveled, if in order to be like rich people, there needs to be poor. In order to be someone that's good, there needs to be something to be bad. So there will be always have to be some kind of contrast. Even though we don't like it, even though we wish it was like all playing field and for everyone even, it will never happen. No matter how much we try.
Yeah. If we have some kind of affirmative action, like one of these programs, right, benefit programs, when you check, if we have that here and you check the box off that says Latino, you're going to automatically go in this column over here.
Yeah, but by getting that check, by getting that like free way to go through that route, you're even making the gap even wider in your field, like in your place, with your people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so in that sense, the Supreme Court decision maybe is a good decision. It's like, yeah, stop doing this, man.
It is a good decision in paper, but that's all what it will be. Like I would think.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds nice. I wish, but it won't.
You
really,
wish what?
I wish it will like word as we're talking about. Like it might help other people to actually say like, okay, like have this chance. But if someone is living their entire life just to see one chance, it's like, are you actually living, or are you trying to fulfill a ideal of what you are?
Hey, okay, I hear you, Zach. What are you thinking about this? Because you under a program in which Penn State seeks or gives something a little bit special in some way, right? What we're trying to do, because you said it earlier, I think, like we want to level. This is what Will is doing here. He's going to talk about it in a little bit. We want to level the playing field per se. Like the more we get, even if like Will grew up without means, but let's say Will but now he's doing very well, and he has a kid. He has children. His children are going to move up. So like because he got certain opportunities here, he just grows and it's like, okay. But what do you do about the fact that we have these programs that just seem like they're unfair? To, like, for example, Jada's lower class, working class. Like, you would get something, but she wouldn't. How do you manage that in your mind?
I think you kind of said it, though, because like for Will, for example, you said he grew up without means, and now that he's able to go to college because of these programs, his kids will be able to do better in school. And I think that's part of, leveling the playing field, because I can speak for black people in general, because black people went through slavery. They went through redlining and stuff when it comes to real estate, being able to apply for loans, credit cards, just basic human rights, where a lot of other people or a lot of other races were able to build their credit, like have families like set up, have alumni in colleges and be able to get in that way. So I think if you have affirmative action where you have, where he said that he came from somewhere with no means, and now that he's able to go to college with this program, now his kids will be set up better.
Okay, but how about you though, right? So if you're when you were applying to college, did you get to the part of what's your background and be like, or you might be eligible for certain, I don't know, a scholarship or something. Did you say like, no, I'm not going, I can't do that.
I mean, I wasn't given any scholarships. When they asked for my race on my college application, obviously I put what race I was, but also I'm an outlier when it comes to black people in the United States. I'm an outlier when it comes to black people in the United States. Most people can, come from the background where they say they had their parents be able to afford to pay for school. So I think using me for an example isn't really a strong case, because I don't represent the majority of the population of black people.
Well, yeah, but listen, man, half of all black Americans are middle class. Okay? And then the other half of black Americans, you have poor black Americans, and you have really rich black Americans. So like, you know, so keep that in mind, right? Like it's not.
I think even then when you talk about like the average black person in middle class, there's a reason why you would see more black people in Section 8 housing and worse housing and worse education rather than like white people. It's because of these things. Like history happened, and we're still feeling the effects of it now. And I think it's up to us as the government that caused it in the first place, to reconcile it and make it better.
I really like this question of like, what are we afraid of, or what we're trying to hear, and like, or how we try to think, because when it comes to this affirmative action conversation, it's just like, oh, but it's just not fair, and it's just like, okay, why is it not fair? And it's like, oh, because you're taking away an opportunity from me, and I worked hard. Okay, like, okay, but it's like, are you really asking the right questions? Or did you study your history? Did you understand how affirmative action, like, was for like years given to like people that had white skin, and the different types of affirmative action programs that are in place, but we focus on race? Like, why aren't we asking questions like, okay, is affirmative action only by race? Are there other forms of affirmative action? Because there really are, right? Like legacy admissions, like Ivy League schools hold a certain percent. Way more, like Penn State, for reference, has only, 4% of black people that attend here? Legacy admissions anywhere between 20 to 40%. So your seat isn't like really like getting taken away from like this person is getting taken away from that person that looks just like you and didn't really have to work that hard. So we're really not asking critical questions when it comes to this, and we have to really like ask ourselves, what is my assumption of the world when I'm like triggered by certain questions? So that's like what I think of when I hear this debate, and people are like, oh, victim blaming, this, that, and the third. It's like, you're not really doing enough thinking for me. You know, that's what I think.
All right, man.
We're talking about all three of y'all too, but also the professor, talking about how in an ideal world, it would be nice that everybody could be on the same playing field, right? But that would be within that generation. But if we were to think about the rich, it's usually the parents who are rich. And the parents, of course, the super rich through nepotism may have accumulated wealth, but a lot of those parents work their ass off to provide their children that set amount of wealth, if it's abundant. So if we were to even that playing field by promoting the poor or lessening the rich, isn't that also like ignoring the parents' effort, all they have invested to provide their children the better upper hand up in the society? And do you think that would be okay?
Do you have an answer to that?
So this like makes me think of like my grandma, because she was a first generation American, and they came through Ellis Island, and literally like from Ukraine. It was just like my great grandma and her 3 daughters, and they had nothing. And then like you see me now as like my like Baba's great granddaughter at Penn State getting this like education. That's because of the hard work that was put in the generations before me. And like, I'm not gonna, it's like hard because I feel like I can't totally like speak into this topic, because I have been like blessed, and my whole life all I've known is like my needs have been met.
But let me add something onto it, something that Will just said. There are these structural constraints historically. And one of the things, my point about, by the way, what do you guys, when I say like racism against black people didn't even begin until 1865, or what do you think I mean? What's that mean to you when you hear that? And I'm going to respond to this.
I think it's just kind of like a shock statement where like you say something to like try to catch people's attention.
Yeah.
Because obviously it didn't, like there was still slavery for a reason before that. But after 1865, it was less of just like, it was more of like a structured racism in the sense where laws were passed to try to like create the illusion where, okay, well now you're not slaves anymore, but still you're passing laws. Can't take loans, can't get houses, can't go to college.
There's so many things, right? Like your grandparents come over and they're able to get these loans and live in certain areas and do all sorts of things. Not just easy, but far more easily, because of structural racism against Poles and Ukrainians wasn't the same, right? And so and then those changes happened down the line.
I would say when you mentioned that statement, for me, at least for my background, like in Peru, at least for my generation and what I've lived, racism hasn't ever been like a problem in there. Like we always just, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, Peru is perfect, we treat everyone with respect and stuff, but it's more about like, and I will say this like pretty like softly, like in Peru we mention the words that are mentioned here in like common sense. Like we would just say it to our best friend in a really calm way, and then when we come here to United States and we hear people talking about the N-word, and in Peru it's just so normal and regular that anyone can say it, and then it's such a sensitive topic here. But I understand that it comes from like there's a history, and just because I'm not part of that history, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be like worried about it. So I'm interested in learning more about it.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Hey, can you go to the next slide?
I wanted to respond too because I really like that question because it really goes into that theme of just like, I work. My parents worked hard. They fought for every opportunity for their children, and I'm the result of that, right? And that's what I say. It goes back to those assumptions, right? Because if your parents work hard and they deserve those opportunities, I would just say, like, when we look at affirmative action in this conversation, who does not work hard? Right?
And everyone thinks that.
Because it's like, okay, so if someone doesn't make that much money, but like let's say they're working class, but their parents are working 16 hours a day, but your parents are like making 6 figures and they only work 8 hours a day, then who is working harder?
Okay, I want to throw.
Like, you know what I mean? So
I want to throw another one onto that.
Yeah.
So people say, hey, the problem with things with these programs based on race is that they're not fair because you're giving something to somebody that they didn't really earn. Well, nepotism is kind of not fair. Like you know, your parents, everything the three of you experience from your parents. It's like just because you're born to that family, you could have been born to a really poor family. Exactly. Like nepotism is, getting something because you know somebody. Exactly. Like, well, that's not fair either.
Exactly.
Like, hang on, I want to just ask this question: What do you think the percentage? Banning race in college admissions is mostly a good thing. What do you think? What percentage of black adults agree with that? What do you think?
Around 50%.
I think depending on how you think and how you take it, it can go like either really high or really low. But I would say like 60.
All right. Grace, do you have any thought?
About 60, 50,
yeah. All right. So it's 52. So here's my question. So I just want to throw this out there. We have this idea, and I said this kind of last class. There's just like the two gentlemen whose photos I put up, Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter. People in the United States, we have this idea that, all white people are this way and all Asians are that way and all black people are like this over here. And it's an immense complexity of ideas. 52% of black Americans are saying get rid of any kind of using race in college admissions. Asians are only 63%, and Asian Americans are the ones who get hurt the most because the bar is much higher for Asians. And so, if there's any discrimination in the world of college admissions, it's against Asians, not against anybody else. I mean, it's mostly against Asians, right? So what do 52% of black Americans see that other people don't see? What are they saying? Like, get rid of that, man. Don't use that anymore. Just judge me on the basis of my test scores and my essay and who I am. Don't use any of that. I don't want to be seen as I don't want any benefits at all. What are they seeing?
I would say it's just like a basic thing that we all try to do in some way or another. Like for me, being a Latino and just knowing that like the amount of not debt but the amount of money that my family is paying, like I would try to relate with like the black Americans here with how much or how hard you need to actually work to be actually able to outstand or to show that you're actually beyond what the average is. So I would say like maybe that 52% is just trying to say like I can stand by myself, I can do this alone. I don't need poor him, let's give him something. Like I can do this by myself.
Okay, but Zach, I want to go back to what you said about what both of you said, right? But the playing field isn't really level. And these people are saying that's okay. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter. Just get rid of it. We'll deal with leveling it out ourselves.
I think my idea as to why a lot of these percentages are saying like they think banning it is a good thing because affirmative action causes colleges to like set a quota and they try to hit a certain amount of students per, type of race, type of culture, and it takes away from letting students in that have better scores, which is why I say like in a perfect world, it would be good to have, just have nothing, like let everybody in based on whatever, like on their college tours, GPA, yada, yada, yada. But there's more kinks to work out when it comes to affirmative action. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, these kinds of things. There's a lot of kinks to work out. And bro, let me ask you, as a college, and you're going to introduce Teach for America in a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Zach just said it might lead people with some higher scores to be pushed out and letting in people with slightly lower scores.
Yeah,
but as a guy who is in this world, first off, I don't know the difference between an A- student and a B student, to be perfectly honest with you, man. I don't know. You know what I mean? I have no idea. And every job I've ever gotten, except the Penn State job, has been based on nepotism because I knew somebody.
Exactly.
Every single thing that's ever happened in the world of work for me is nepotism. I knew someone, except this current job that I have. I showed up one day and they said, all right.
Yeah.
So can you just respond to what he just said about test scores? Like, are they really like, what are you looking at in a student?
I mean, like,
because you're hiring these people.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's one of those things. It's like it's like when I hear your responses and I think of like the 52%. I don't know. It just comes to this illusion of like meritocracy. I just think of like time and time again, and like when I say that, it just really means it's just like, oh, like, like when we have a certain quota, undeserving people will get it, but really not enough deserving people have that opportunity. And the thing is, when it comes to like nepotism,
wait, hang on. That opportunity, bro, there are so many opportunities in here for students to have. Yeah. Maybe they don't get that one opportunity, but if they work hard, though, you're going to get other ones.
If they work hard enough, they're going to get the opportunity. Yeah,
you're going to get some opportunities. You may not get that one that you think.
Even if you don't get the one that you want, you're going to get some.
Okay.
Right.
So what's the illusion of meritocracy? It sounds like it works.
Yeah, the illusion. It sounds like it works. That's the issue, right? So it's two things. In that 52%, I think, obviously I'm not them, but I see two things. One, like, I believe in my merit. I can work hard, and like, when I work hard, I'm going to get those opportunities, right? But it's also two, they don't understand. Like, we hear about inequity and inequality, but we don't really understand how unequal it is, how inequitable it is.
That's true.
We grossly underestimate that. So even when it comes to jobs, and I'll tell you this, because when I was a student, I wanted to believe, y'all heard that saying, it doesn't matter what you know, it's who you know. Y'all heard that? Yeah? I didn't want to believe that. But when you get into the job market, especially during the pandemic, when people were getting laid off, my friends who were recent grads, they were top of their class, couldn't get jobs for 1, maybe even 2 years. But the friends who actually knew some people or knew the right person or had a connection or had a professor to speak to them got jobs. And some of my friends are still employed.
Yeah, because you know me.
Because I had even me.
No,
like,
hang
I
on.
had certain opportunities. It's not like having opportunities doesn't take away from my merit, but it's also recognizing that some people, even if they fit the bill, do not have that opportunity.
All right, hang on. I just want to say one thing really fast. I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's a really good point, but I want to make the point that this is not the dualism piece that we talked about last class.
Right.
It's not one or the other. There is who you know. But if you continue to just keep working hard and plugging away, the opportunities come.
Sometimes.
No, they're always going to come. The alternative is not work hard, and then you're not going to, the opportunities won't come.
The alternative is to not work hard, but you can't not work hard, right? But working hard is not a guarantee.
Okay. It's a guarantee that you're going to be better off.
That's the problem.
Okay, but hang on.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a dualism. It's not saying it's either or. It's saying, yes, we need to work hard. And we're saying at the same time that it's true that this inequity exists.
Okay. I got you.
You know what I mean?
I got you.
So it's like,
But if you, Okay, hang on. Here, listen to this. And then you got to talk about TFA for a second.
Yeah, I'll talk about it.
You're better off to work hard than to not work hard, and most everybody does.